The mob came for her at dusk. Senna had always known this day would come. You cannot hide forever, not with two pups whose eyes blazed gold in the firelight, marking them as something more than ordinary, something royal, something that would get her killed. She pressed her children closer, their small bodies warm against her chest, their tiny fingers curled into her threadbare dress. Nira whimpered in her sleep. Oren's breath was steady, trusting, unaware. They did not know that outside their crumbling cottage, 30 villagers had gathered with torches and rope. "Bring out the witch!" someone screamed. "Bring out the stolen children!" Stolen. If only they knew the truth. These pups were not stolen. They were hers. Flesh of her flesh. Blood of her blood. And their father was the most powerful man in the kingdom, the Alpha King of Valdris, the man who did not know they existed. Senna had spent nearly 2 years running from the palace, from the accusations, from the death sentence that waited if anyone discovered whose bed she had once shared, whose heirs she now cradled. Her flight had led her to this forgotten village at the edge of the realm, to a warped wooden door that would not hold for another minute. Then the screaming outside stopped. A silence fell, sudden and absolute. The kind of silence that only comes when something terrifying arrives. Senna's wolf stirred beneath her skin, recognizing the presence before her mind could name it. The door did not burst open. It simply opened. And there he stood. Theron, the Alpha King himself. Taller than she remembered. Colder than the winter wind that followed him inside. His eyes found hers first, then dropped to the pups in her arms, to their sleeping faces, to their unmistakable golden eyes, the same gold that burned in his own. For one endless moment, nobody breathed. "These are mine," he said quietly. Not a question. And Senna understood that her running had only delivered her into a different kind of trap. One with a king for a jailer, one that neither of them might survive. The village of Millbrook had never been kind to strangers. Senna had learned that the moment she arrived nearly 2 years ago, heavy with child and half-starved from weeks of travel. The villagers had watched her with suspicion then, this lone woman with no mate, no pack, no name she was willing to give. She had traded labor for shelter, mending clothes, grinding herbs, tending to the sick when no one else would. Slowly, grudgingly, they had tolerated her presence. But tolerance was not acceptance. And when her pups were born with eyes like molten gold, tolerance began to curdle into fear. Now that fear had become a mob. Senna stood in the center of her single-room cottage, her back pressed against the far wall, her children clutched to her chest. Through the gaps in the shuttered windows she could see the glow of torches, the shadows of bodies, the glint of rusted farm tools raised like weapons. "She has cursed them!" A woman's voice shrieked. "Look at their eyes! No natural child has eyes like that." "Witch!" Another voice joined. "She has been practicing dark magic on those babes." Senna's arms tightened around her pups. Nira stirred against her shoulder, her small face scrunching at the noise. Oren remained asleep, his thumb tucked into his mouth, blissfully unaware that his life hung by a thread. They were 18 months old now. Walking, babbling, beginning to shift in ways that should have been impossible for pups so young. Last week, Nira had sprouted tiny claws during a tantrum. Yesterday, Oren's eyes had glowed bright enough to light the darkened room. That was when the whispers had started, when the villagers had begun crossing to the other side of the street when she passed, when the old midwife who had helped deliver the twins had looked at Senna with dawning horror and asked, "What are they?" Senna could not answer, could not explain that the gold in her children's eyes was a bloodline marker, a trait passed down through generations of the royal family of Valdris, could not confess that these were no ordinary pups, but the offspring of the Alpha King himself. So she had planned to run again. Tomorrow, she had told herself. Tomorrow she would pack what little they had and disappear before anyone connected the truth. Tomorrow had come too late. The front door shuddered under a heavy blow. Senna flinched, pressing herself further into the corner. "Open up, witch!" The voice belonged to Corvath, the village elder, a hard man with harder eyes who had never trusted her. "Surrender the children and face judgment, or we will burn you out." Burn. The word sent ice through her veins. Fire was the traditional punishment for witchcraft in the outer villages, far from the king's law. Out here, justice was whatever the mob decided, and the mob had decided she was guilty. Nira began to cry, a thin wail that cut through the shouting outside. Senna rocked her desperately, making soothing sounds she did not feel. "Shh, little one, shh. Mama is here. Mama will not let them hurt you." But even as she spoke, she knew the words were lies. The door would not hold. There was no back exit, no window large enough to climb through with 2 pups in her arms. Her wolf was strong, but not strong enough to fight 30 humans bent on blood. She was going to die here, and worse, her children would die with her, or be taken. Raised by strangers who would never understand what they were, who might hurt them, cage them, sell them to someone who recognized their worth. The door cracked. Senna's wolf surged forward, a snarl building in her throat. If she was going to die, she would die fighting. She would take as many of them with her as she could. Then silence. The shouting stopped mid-word. The blows against the door ceased. The torchlight flickered and steadied. Into that silence came footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. The tread of someone who had never needed to hurry because the world rearranged itself around his schedule. Senna's wolf recognized him before her eyes did. Every hair on her body stood upright. Every instinct screamed at her to kneel, to bare her throat, to submit to the dominance that rolled through the village like a thunderclap. Alpha. Not just any alpha. The alpha. The door swung open, and Theron, Alpha King of Valdris, stepped into her home. He was exactly as she remembered, and nothing like she remembered. Taller, perhaps, or maybe she had simply forgotten how small she felt in his presence. His dark hair was longer now, brushing his shoulders, and there were shadows beneath his eyes that had not been there before. But those eyes themselves were unchanged. Gold as sunrise. Gold as the eyes of the pups in her arms. He looked at her, and she could not breathe. He looked at the children, and the world stopped turning. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Then the Alpha King spoke, his voice soft as snowfall and twice as cold. "Everyone out, now." The villagers scattered like leaves before a storm. Senna watched through the open doorway as they fled. Corvath first, his torch abandoned in the mud, then the others in a stumbling, terrified mass. Within seconds, the street was empty. Within a minute, doors were slamming throughout the village as families barricaded themselves inside their homes. The Alpha King commanded that kind of fear. Theron stood motionless in her doorway, his massive frame blocking the moonlight. He had not looked away from her, had not blinked. His expression revealed nothing. Not anger, not recognition, not even surprise. Just that terrible frozen stillness that she remembered from the palace. The stillness that preceded either mercy or destruction. "You will explain," he said quietly, "why you are holding my heirs." My heirs, not these pups or those children. He had known the moment he saw their eyes. The royal bloodline was unmistakable. Senna's throat closed around the words she had rehearsed 1,000 times, the explanations, the excuses, the desperate pleas for understanding. None of them would come. Instead, she heard herself say, "They are mine." Something flickered in Theron's eyes, a crack in the ice. "Yours," he repeated. "Yes." She lifted her chin, though her legs trembled beneath her. "I carried them. I birthed them alone in a shepherd's hut during a blizzard. I have fed them and clothed them and kept them alive for 18 months while your kingdom hunted me like an animal." Her voice cracked. "They are mine." Theron took a step forward, then another. Each footfall was silent despite his size, predator soft, and Senna's wolf screamed at her to run, to flee, to protect the pups at any cost. But there was nowhere to run. There had never been anywhere to run. She understood that now. He stopped an arm's length away, close enough that she could smell him. Pine and frost and something darker. Something that made her chest ache with memories she had tried to bury. "Look at me," he commanded. Senna forced her eyes to meet his. For a long moment, he simply studied her face, searching, cataloging. His gaze traced the hollows beneath her cheekbones, the new lines around her eyes, the way nearly 2 years of fear and hardship had carved her into someone harder than the woman he had once known. "Senna," he said finally. Her name in his mouth was a wound reopening. "You remember," she whispered. "I never forgot." His jaw tightened. "I searched for you. For months. My trackers found nothing. It was as though you had vanished from the earth itself." He paused. "Until 3 days ago, when a merchant reported seeing twin pups with golden eyes in a border village. I came immediately. Golden-eyed pups. Her children's birthright had betrayed them after all." Senna's laugh was bitter. "I learned to hide. Your court taught me that much at least. How to become invisible. How to disappear before someone decided I was inconvenient." The accusation hung between them, heavy with everything unspoken. Theron's eyes dropped to the pups. Nira had stopped crying, her golden gaze fixed on the stranger with an intensity that belied her age. Oren was awake now too, watching silently, his small body rigid in Senna's arms. "May I?" Theron asked, his voice suddenly rough. The request startled her. The Alpha King did not ask permission. Not for anything. Yet here he stood, waiting, one hand extended toward his own children as though he feared she might refuse. Senna's wolf warred with her heart. He could take them. He had every right. Every law in Valdris would support a king claiming his heirs. But he was asking. Slowly, she shifted Oren forward. The boy went willingly, reaching for this stranger with the curious fearlessness of pups, who had not yet learned that the world was full of teeth. Theron lifted him with hands that trembled almost imperceptibly. He cradled Oren against his chest, staring down at the small face as though seeing something miraculous. "He has your chin," Theron murmured, "and your stubbornness. I can see it already." Against her will, Senna felt tears prick her eyes. He does. He has been shifting too early, showing signs of power that should not manifest for years. "Royal blood," Theron said. "It always runs strong." Nira squirmed in Senna's arms, reaching for her brother, for the strange man holding him. Theron extended his other arm without hesitation, and Senna found herself surrendering her daughter as well. The Alpha King stood in her wretched cottage holding both pups as though they were made of glass, as though they were precious, as though they mattered. "Why did you run?" he asked without looking up. "Why did you take them from me before I even knew they existed?" The question sliced through her. "Because I was going to die if I stayed." Senna wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. "Your advisors discovered our arrangement. They gave me a choice. Leave the palace that night, never speak of what happened between us and live, or stay and face execution for seducing the king." Theron's head snapped up. "What?" "They said you had ordered it yourself." Her voice was barely audible. "They said you had grown tired of me, that I was an embarrassment, that if I was not gone by dawn, the guards would find me and—" She could not finish. The gold in Theron's eyes blazed bright as fire. "I gave no such order." "I did not know that." Tears spilled down her cheeks now, nearly 2 years of terror and exhaustion breaking through her carefully constructed walls. "I did not know anything except that men with swords came to my chamber in the middle of the night and told me I had 1 hour to disappear. I was 8 weeks pregnant. I had no one. Nothing. So I ran." Theron closed his eyes. When he opened them again, some of the ice had thawed, replaced by something that looked almost like anguish. I thought you had left willingly, he said roughly. I thought you had realized what I was, what being with me would mean, and chosen freedom over a life in my shadow. I would never have left you, Senna whispered. I loved you. The confession escaped before she could stop it. Past tense. Loved. As though it were something that had ended. They both knew it had not. The moment stretched between them, fragile as spun glass. Then Orin yawned, breaking the spell, and Theron seemed to remember where they were. In a crumbling hovel. In a hostile village. Surrounded by people who would happily see Senna burn. You are coming with me, he announced. Tonight. Now. Senna stiffened. As what? Your prisoner. As the mother of my children. His voice hardened. As someone under my protection. No one will touch you while you bear that status. No one will dare. And after? She had to ask. When you have secured your heirs? When you no longer need me to care for them? Theron's expression flickered. For just a moment she saw the man she had known beneath the crown. The man who had held her through nightmares. The man who had laughed at her terrible jokes. The man who had looked at her as though she were the only star in his sky. Then the mask returned. We will discuss terms at the palace, he said flatly. Gather what you need. We leave within the hour. He turned toward the door, both pups still cradled against his chest. Nira had already fallen asleep against his shoulder. Orin was playing with a lock of the king's dark hair, utterly content. They had accepted him instantly, as though they had been waiting for him all along. Senna watched them go, her children, her heart, everything she had fought to protect, walking out of her cottage in the arms of a king she had once loved and now could not read at all. She had 1 hour to decide. Stay in this village and face the mob alone when Theron's protection faded, or follow the father of her children into a palace full of enemies who had already tried to kill her once. Neither choice felt like safety, but only one choice let her stay with Nira and Orin. Senna began to pack. The palace of Valdris rose from the mountain like a blade of black stone. Senna had forgotten how imposing it was. Or perhaps she had simply tried to forget. The spires that pierced the clouds. The walls that had never been breached. The sense, as the carriage passed through the iron gates, that she was entering the maw of some enormous beast. She had escaped this place once. Now she was returning voluntarily. The pups slept in the seat across from her, nestled together in a pile of fur blankets that Theron's guards had produced from somewhere. The king himself had ridden ahead on horseback, leaving her alone with her thoughts and her fears for the entire 3-day journey. He had not spoken to her again after that first night. Had not looked at her. Had not touched her. He had simply issued orders, provide the woman whatever she needs, protect her with your lives, and vanished into the darkness. Senna understood the message. She was the mother of his heirs. That status afforded her protection. But she was not his lover. Not his companion. Not anything except a means to an end. Cold over cruelty, she reminded herself. The words had become a litany during the journey. He is not cruel. He is just cold. I can survive cold. The carriage stopped. A footman opened the door, his face carefully blank. This way, my lady. My lady. The title felt like a costume that did not fit. Senna gathered Nira into her arms. A servant she did not recognize reached for Orin, and she nearly snarled before catching herself. The woman was only trying to help. These were not enemies. Not yet. She allowed the servant to carry her son, keeping close enough that she could snatch him back at the first sign of danger. The palace corridors were exactly as she remembered. Marble floors polished to a mirror shine, tapestries depicting centuries of Valdris kings. Servants who moved like ghosts, never meeting her eyes. Nearly 2 years ago, she had walked these halls as a palace healer. Invisible. Unremarkable. No one had noticed when the king started visiting the infirmary more often than necessary. No one had suspected that behind a locked door in the herb storage room, the most powerful man in Valdris had been kissing a nobody like his life depended on it. Now everyone noticed her. The whispers started before she had made it 20 steps. Is that her? The woman they found with the king's pups? Look at her clothes. She is practically a peasant. How dare she show her face here after what she did? Senna kept her chin high and her eyes forward. Let them whisper. She had survived worse. They stopped before a set of ornate double doors. The footman knocked twice, then pushed them open. The king will see you now, my lady. Senna stepped inside. The room was a private study, smaller than she had expected. Books lined every wall. A fire burned in the hearth despite the summer heat outside. And standing before the window, silhouetted against the afternoon light, was Theron. He had changed from his traveling clothes into something more formal. Dark trousers, a white shirt open at the throat, a vest embroidered with the royal crest. His hair was pulled back from his face, emphasizing the sharp angles of his cheekbones, the firm line of his jaw. He looked like a king. He looked untouchable. He looked exhausted. Senna noticed it now, in the harsh daylight. The shadows beneath his eyes were not just shadows. They were bruises of sleeplessness. His skin had a grayish pallor that had not been there before. And his movements, when he turned to face her, were stiff in a way that suggested pain. Something was wrong with him. Leave us, Theron commanded. The servants vanished. The doors clicked shut. They were alone. Nira squirmed in Senna's arms, reaching toward her father. Senna set her down, and the pup immediately toddled across the carpet, babbling happily. Oren followed, both children drawn to the king like flowers to sunlight. Theron knelt to meet them, his face transformed, the hardness melting away, replaced by something soft and wondering. He caught Nira when she stumbled, steadied Oren when he crashed into his leg. His hands were gentle. His voice, when he spoke to them, was gentle too. Hello, little ones. Did you have a good journey? Senna watched, her heart cracking along old fault lines. He is good with them, she thought. He already loves them. After several minutes, Theron lifted his head. The softness vanished. The king returned. We need to discuss arrangements, he said. Senna nodded tightly. I assumed we would. The children will be raised here, in the palace. They are my heirs, my only heirs, and their education, their safety, and their futures are my responsibility. I understand. You will remain as well. His tone was clinical, as though he were negotiating a treaty rather than discussing their children. You will be given chambers in the East Wing, servants, an allowance, everything you need to live comfortably. And in exchange? Theron's jaw tightened. You will help raise them, teach them, be their mother in every way that matters. But? The word hung between them. Theron looked away. But nothing else. We will not resume what we had before. You will be the mother of the royal heirs. I will be their father. Beyond that, we will be nothing to each other. The words should not have hurt. She had expected them, had braced for them. Yet they cut all the same. May I ask why? Senna kept her voice steady through sheer force of will. Not because I expect anything from you, but because I would like to understand. Theron was silent for a long moment. Because I cannot, he said finally. Because what we had... He stopped. Started again. There are things about me you do not know. Things I cannot explain. It is better for everyone if we maintain distance. Better for who? For you. His eyes met hers, and she saw something there she could not name. Pain, perhaps. Or fear. For the children. For the kingdom. Senna wanted to argue, wanted to demand the truth, but Nira had found a loose thread on Theron's vest and was pulling at it with determined fascination, and Oren had claimed his father's knee as a climbing apparatus, and the moment for demands had passed. Very well, she said quietly. I accept your terms. Theron nodded once. Good. There is one more thing. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Inside was a ring. Simple silver, unmarked, nothing like the elaborate jewelry worn by nobility. This belonged to my mother, he said. It marks you as being under my protection. Anyone who harms you while you wear it will answer to me personally. Senna stared at the ring. You are not asking me to marry you? No. His voice was flat. Marriage requires things I cannot give. But this, he held out the box. This I can offer. Safety, security, a home. For you, and for our children. Our children. It was the first time he had said it that way. The first acknowledgement that they had created something together. Something that belonged to both of them. Senna took the ring. It fit perfectly on her left hand. Thank you, she said softly, for the protection. For bringing us here instead of... She could not finish. Instead of what they would have done to you in that village? Theron's expression darkened. Did you really think I would let them harm you? I did not know what to think. I have not known what to think for nearly 2 years. The confession seemed to catch him off guard. For just a moment, his mask slipped, and she saw the man underneath. Tired, hurting, lost. Then Nira sneezed, breaking the spell, and Theron was the king again. Your chambers are prepared, he said briskly. The servants will show you. We will dine separately tonight. You should rest after the journey. But tomorrow we will begin introducing the children to the court. He lifted both pups into his arms with practiced ease, kissing each of their foreheads before handing them back to Senna. His fingers brushed hers during the exchange. His skin was cold, ice cold, far colder than any living shifter should be. Senna's eyes widened. Theron. Tomorrow, he interrupted. We will speak more tomorrow. He turned away, dismissing her. But not before she saw him wince, not before she noticed the way he pressed a hand to his chest, just above his heart. Not before she glimpsed, in the afternoon light, the faint trace of frost crystals forming on his fingertips. Something was very, very wrong with the Alpha King, and Senna had just agreed to live under his roof without knowing what. The East Wing chambers were finer than anything Senna had ever known. 3 rooms, a sitting area, a bedroom, and a nursery for the pups, all connected by archways hung with velvet drapes. The furniture was dark wood polished to a gleam. The bed was large enough for 6 people. The windows overlooked the palace gardens, where roses bloomed in impossible colors beneath the mountain sun. It felt like a gilded cage. Senna spent the first morning exploring her new prison, learning the placement of every door, every window, every possible escape route. Old habits, the kind you developed when you had spent nearly 2 years running for your life. The pups adapted faster than she did. By noon, Nira had claimed a corner of the nursery as her personal kingdom, surrounding herself with the stuffed wolves and wooden toys that had appeared overnight. Oren had discovered the joy of pulling books from the low shelves and spreading them across the floor in elaborate patterns only he understood. They were happy, safe, fed, warm. Senna should have felt grateful. Instead, she felt the walls closing in. A knock at the door made her jump. She smoothed her dress, a simple gray thing she had brought from the village, woefully inadequate for palace life, and called, "Enter." The woman who stepped inside was everything Senna was not. Tall, elegant, dressed in silk the color of fresh blood. Her hair was black as a raven's wing, piled atop her head in an elaborate arrangement that must have taken hours. Her features were sharp, beautiful, cruel, and her eyes, when they landed on Senna, held nothing but contempt. "So," the woman said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "you are the little mouse who has been hiding the king's pups." Senna straightened her spine. "I do not believe we have met." Lady Zafira Voss. The woman did not offer her hand. Head of the king's council, keeper of his schedule, manager of his personal affairs. The emphasis on those last words was unmistakable. "I see," Senna said carefully. "Is there something I can help you with, Lady Voss?" Zafira's smile was a blade wrapped in silk. I simply wanted to welcome you to the palace, and to make certain you understand your position here. My position? You are the mother of the king's heirs. Nothing more. Zafira stepped closer, her perfume cloying. You are not his consort, not his companion, not his confidant. You are a vessel that happened to produce something useful. The moment those children no longer need you, your purpose here ends. The words stung more than Senna wanted to admit. The king has offered me his protection, she said quietly. I wear his mother's ring. Zafira's eyes dropped to Senna's hand. Something flickered in her expression. Surprise, perhaps, or jealousy, before the mask returned. How touching! He gave the family heirloom to the help. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Enjoy your trinket, dear. It will not save you when the court learns what you really are. Senna's blood ran cold. What I really am? Oh, do not play innocent. Did you think no one would investigate? Zafira circled her slowly, a predator assessing prey. A palace healer who seduced the king, then vanished without a trace? Of course questions were asked. Of course people dug. There is nothing to find. Everyone has secrets. Zafira stopped directly in front of her, close enough that Senna could see the powder caked in the fine lines around her eyes. I have already sent inquiries to the village where you were living, to the towns you passed through during your little flight. Sooner or later, I will discover what you are hiding. Senna forced herself to breathe. I am hiding nothing. We will see. Zafira's smile widened. In the meantime, a word of advice. Stay away from the king. Do not seek private audiences. Do not reminisce about old times. Do not imagine, even for a moment, that what you had before could ever resume. The king has already made clear that we will maintain distance. Good. See that you do. Zafira turned toward the door, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. The court presentation tomorrow? I would suggest wearing something less tragic. You will be representing the mother of the royal heirs. Try not to embarrass us all. She swept out without waiting for a response. Senna stood motionless in the center of her beautiful cage, her hands trembling at her sides. Zafira knew, or suspected, or was fishing for information she did not yet have. It did not matter which. The result would be the same. Because there was something to find, something Senna had hidden her entire life. Something that would get her killed if anyone discovered the truth. She looked down at her left hand, at the ring Theron had given her. His mother's ring, a promise of protection. But protection had limits, and some secrets, once revealed, were beyond any king's power to forgive. The summons came that evening. A servant appeared at her door with a note bearing the royal seal. 3 words in Theron's handwriting. Come to dinner. Not a request, a command. Senna dressed carefully. Not for him, she told herself, but for survival. The servants had delivered a wardrobe sometime during the afternoon, gowns in every color and fabric. She chose the simplest, deep blue silk that covered her from throat to wrist to ankle. Modest, unremarkable, safe. The pups were asleep when she left, watched over by a wet nurse Theron had appointed. Senna hated leaving them, but refusing the king's summons was not an option. She followed a servant through corridors she half remembered, past portraits of dead kings with golden eyes, until they reached a small dining room she had never seen before. Private, intimate, a table set for 2. Theron stood by the window, his back to her. He did not turn when she entered. Sit, he said. Senna sat. For a long moment neither spoke. Servants appeared with food, roasted meat, fresh bread, wine the color of rubies, then vanished like smoke. The fire crackled, the candles flickered. Finally, Theron turned. He looked worse than yesterday. The shadows beneath his eyes had deepened. His skin had a bluish tinge in the candlelight. And when he moved to take his seat across from her, she saw him suppress a wince. You met Zafira, he said. Not a question. She introduced herself. Yes. And? Senna chose her words carefully. She made her feelings about my presence very clear. Theron's jaw tightened. She oversteps. I will speak to her. Do not. The word came out sharper than intended. If you defend me, it will only make things worse. She will think I am manipulating you, that I have somehow regained influence. Have you? The question caught her off guard. Have I what? Regained influence. Theron's golden eyes studied her face. Do you still have power over me, Senna? Her pulse quickened. I never had power over you. You did. His voice dropped, rough as gravel. More than you knew. More than I wanted to admit. The confession hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Senna looked away first. That was before. Things are different now. Are they? She forced herself to meet his gaze. You told me we would be nothing to each other, that we would maintain distance. That marriage requires things you cannot give. Theron was silent. I accepted those terms, Senna continued. I am not trying to change them. I am not trying to manipulate you or regain influence or whatever Zafira is afraid of. I just want to raise our children in peace. And if I told you the terms had changed? The words stole her breath. Changed how? She whispered. Theron leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his hands clasped before him. In the firelight, she could see frost crystals forming on his knuckles. Tiny, almost invisible, but unmistakably there. I am dying, Senna. The room tilted. What? There is a curse on my bloodline. Ancient, unbreakable. His voice was flat, reciting facts. Every king of Valdris eventually succumbs to it. My father lasted until his 50s. My grandfather made it to 60. But he laughed bitterly. I have always been impatient. I do not understand. The curse accelerates when we form attachments, when we care too deeply about anything, a place, a purpose, a person. His eyes met hers, burning gold. When we love. Senna's hands gripped the edge of the table. My father loved nothing, Theron continued. He was cold, distant, cruel. It kept him alive for decades. But He stopped, started again. I made a mistake. I let myself feel something I should not have. And now the curse is consuming me faster than it should. The truth crashed over her like a wave. Me, she breathed. You loved me. Theron did not answer. He did not need to. That is why you pushed me away. Senna realized. That is why you let your advisors chase me from the palace. You were trying to stop the curse. I did not let them chase you. His voice cracked. I did not know. I swear to you, I did not know what they had done until you were already gone. By then. He pressed a hand to his chest, grimacing. By then, it did not matter. The damage was done. Loving you had already started killing me. Tears burned behind Senna's eyes. Theron, do not. He held up a hand. Do not pity me. Do not apologize. Do not try to fix it. There is no fixing it. The curse is absolute. The only question is how long I have left. How long? Months, perhaps. A year if I am fortunate. He smiled grimly. Less if I am not. Senna stared at him. This man she had loved. This man she had fled from. This man who was dying because he had made the mistake of caring about her. There has to be something, she said desperately. Healers, witches, ancient magic, something. There is nothing. Theron stood abruptly, turning away. I have searched. My father searched. His father before him. The curse was designed to be unbreakable. The only way to survive it is to feel nothing, and His voice dropped. I have never been good at feeling nothing. He walked to the window, his back to her, his shoulders bowed beneath the weight of a death sentence he had been carrying alone. And Senna thought of the secret she had kept her entire life. The mark hidden beneath her clothes. The power she had never dared use. The birthright she had buried so deep, she had almost forgotten it existed. Fire, whispered a voice in her mind. Fire to melt the ice, but to reveal what she was would be to sign her own death warrant. Ember witches were hunted in Valdris, executed on sight. Theron's own great-grandfather had ordered the purge. She could save him. Maybe. Possibly. If her power was even strong enough after years of suppression. Or she could stay silent and watch him die. The choice was impossible. I should go, Senna said, standing on unsteady legs. The pups will wake soon. Theron nodded without turning around. The court presentation is tomorrow, 10 in the morning. Try to get some sleep. She made it to the door before his voice stopped her. Senna. She paused, one hand on the frame. Whatever Zephyra threatened, whatever she claims to know, do not let her intimidate you. His voice was soft. You are under my protection. As long as I breathe, no one will harm you. The irony was almost too much to bear. As long as I breathe. Which might not be very long at all. The great hall of Valdris had been built to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, painted with scenes of ancient battles and legendary kings. Pillars of black marble lined the walls, each one carved with the snarling face of a wolf. The throne itself sat at the far end of the room, raised on a dais, crafted from a single piece of obsidian that seemed to drink the light. And filling every inch of available space, dressed in silks and jewels and hungry expressions, stood the court. Senna clutched Nira to her chest and tried to remember how to breathe. They are staring, she murmured to the servant beside her. Of course they are, my lady. You are about to be presented as the mother of the royal heirs. They have been waiting for this moment since word spread of your arrival. Waiting. Like vultures waiting for a carcass. Oren squirmed in the arms of the nurse walking behind them. He wanted down. Wanted to run. Wanted to explore this fascinating new place full of interesting smells and shiny objects. Soon, little one, Senna whispered. Just hold still a little longer. The crowd parted as they approached the throne. Whispers followed in their wake. Is that her? The healer who trapped the king? Look at those pups. The eyes are unmistakable. She is pretty enough, I suppose, in a common sort of way. Senna kept her gaze fixed forward, on the throne, on the man who sat upon it. Theron was dressed in full royal regalia, black velvet trimmed with silver, the crown of Valdris resting on his brow, his expression carved from stone. He looked every inch the Alpha King, untouchable, unknowable. Nothing like the dying man who had confessed his secrets over dinner. Their eyes met. For just a moment, his mask slipped. She saw exhaustion, pain, fear. Then the mask returned, and he was the king again. Present yourself, he commanded. Senna knelt on the hard marble floor, bowing her head. Behind her, the nurse lowered Oren to his feet. The boy immediately tried to toddle toward his father, restrained only by a gentle hand on his shoulder. Your Majesty, Senna said, her voice carrying through the silent hall. I present your heirs, Oren and Nira, children of your blood, future of your line. The formality felt strange on her tongue. These were her babies. She had named them in a shepherd's hut during a blizzard. She had nursed them through fevers and teething and nightmares. Now she was presenting them like offerings to a god. Theron rose from his throne and descended the dais. The court held its breath. He stopped before her, his boots inches from her bowed head. She could feel the cold radiating from him, colder than yesterday, colder than the night before. The curse was progressing. Rise, he said. Senna stood. Theron's attention moved to the pups. Nira had buried her face in Senna's neck, suddenly shy. But Oren had no such reservations. He broke free from the nurse and launched himself at his father's legs, babbling happily. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Theron bent and lifted his son into his arms. The boy laughed, grabbing fistfuls of his father's dark hair. And for just a moment, just a heartbeat, the king smiled. It transformed his face, made him human, made him the man Senna remembered from stolen moments in darkened corridors. Then the smile vanished, and he was the king again. I acknowledge these children as my own, Theron announced, his voice ringing through the hall. Orin, firstborn son, heir to the throne of Valdris, Nira, daughter of my blood, princess of the realm. They are under my protection. Any who threaten them threaten me. His golden eyes swept the crowd, lingering on certain faces. A warning. Their mother, he continued, is likewise under my protection. She wears the ring of my house. She holds a position of honor in my court. Any slight against her is a slight against the crown. The court erupted in whispers. Honor? She is a commoner. The ring of his house? His mother's ring? This is unprecedented. Zephira's voice cut through the noise. Your Majesty, if I may. Theron's expression hardened. You may not. But surely the court deserves to know. Lady Voss. His voice dropped, soft and deadly. I said you may not. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. Several courtiers stepped back. Zephira's face went pale, then flushed with barely suppressed fury. Of course, Your Majesty, she said through gritted teeth. Forgive my impertinence. Theron turned back to Senna. Take the children to the nursery. They have been paraded enough for one day. It was a dismissal, but a kind one, an excuse to escape. Thank you, Your Majesty, Senna murmured. She reached for Orin, but the boy clung to his father, whining. Theron's expression softened imperceptibly. Go with your mother, he said quietly. I will visit you later. Orin considered this, his small face scrunched in thought. Then he nodded solemnly and allowed himself to be transferred to Senna's arms. The crowd parted as she walked toward the doors, the nurse trailing behind with Nira. Whispers followed her, some hostile, some merely curious, but no one dared speak directly to her. No one dared challenge the king's decree. She had almost reached the exit when a hand closed around her wrist. Senna spun, her wolf snarling to the surface. Zephira stood there, her grip bruising, her smile razor-sharp. A word of warning, she breathed, too quiet for anyone else to hear. The king may protect you now, but kings do not live forever, especially not this one. Her eyes glittered. When he is gone, there will be no one standing between you and justice, and I will personally ensure you receive exactly what you deserve. She released Senna's wrist and stepped back, her expression transforming into innocent concern. My lady, are you unwell? You have gone quite pale. Senna forced her voice steady. I am fine. Thank you for your concern, Lady Voss. She walked out of the great hall on legs that trembled. When he is gone, Zephira knew about the curse, knew Theron was dying, and she was already planning for the aftermath, which meant Senna had less time than she had thought. Less time to decide whether saving the king was worth revealing everything she had spent her life hiding. Less time before the wolves came for her children. 3 weeks passed in uneasy routine. Mornings, Senna spent with the pups, teaching them letters, playing in the garden, watching them grow stronger and more confident by the day. Afternoons, she walked the palace corridors with a guard at her back, learning the layout, memorizing escape routes, preparing for disasters she hoped would never come. Evenings, she dined alone in her chambers and tried not to think about the man dying in the room above hers. Theron kept his distance. He visited the nursery daily, that much he had insisted on, but he never came when Senna was present. She would arrive to find toys rearranged, blankets tucked differently, the faint scent of frost and pine lingering in the air. Evidence of a father who loved his children but could not bear to see their mother. She told herself it was better this way. Safer. Cleaner. She told herself she did not miss him. She lied. On the 22nd night, everything changed. A sound woke her from restless sleep. A crash, followed by a cry that raised every hair on her body. Senna was out of bed before she was fully conscious, racing toward the nursery, her wolf clawing at her skin. The pups were fine, sleeping peacefully, undisturbed by whatever had torn her from her dreams. The sound came again. From above. From Theron's chambers. Senna hesitated for only a moment. Then she was running. The guards outside his door tried to stop her. "My lady, you cannot." She pushed past them without breaking stride. The king's chambers were dark, cold, so cold that her breath fogged before her face. And on the floor beside an overturned table, Theron lay curled in on himself, his hands pressed to his chest, his face contorted in agony. "Get the healers!" Senna screamed at the guards. "Now!" She dropped to her knees beside him. His skin was like ice, not just cold, but actively frozen, frost spreading across his bare chest in crystalline patterns. His lips were blue. His eyes, when they opened, were more white than gold. "Senna." Her name was a rasp. "You should not be here." "Shut up." She pressed her hands to his chest, feeling the unnatural cold bite into her palms. "Tell me what to do." "How do I help?" "You cannot." He laughed bitterly, the sound dissolving into a cough. "No one can. This is what happens. The curse takes what it wants, when it wants." "No." Senna shook her head fiercely. "I will not accept that. There has to be something." "Fire," Theron gasped. "Fire slows it, but nothing stops it." Fire. The word echoed in her mind. She looked down at her hands, still pressed against his frozen chest. Hands that had never held a flame. Hands that had been trained since childhood to suppress, to hide, to deny the power that burned in her blood. I could save him. The thought was terrifying. I could save him, and he would know what I am. Theron's eyes had closed. His breathing was shallow, rapid. The frost was spreading across his chest, up his throat, toward his face. He was dying. Right here, right now. And Senna had to choose. Her secret, or his life. Her safety, or her heart. She closed her eyes. She reached for the fire. It came reluctantly, sluggish from years of suppression, but it came. Heat bloomed in her chest, spreading down her arms into her palms. She felt the warmth build. Not painful, not burning, but alive, present, real. She pressed her hands harder against Theron's chest and let the fire flow. The effect was immediate. The frost retreated, melting beneath her palms, revealing pale skin and the steady beat of a heart that had almost stopped. Color returned to his lips. His breathing deepened. The terrible tension in his body began to ease. Senna poured everything she had into him. Every ounce of warmth. Every spark of flame. Every secret she had kept since childhood. She did not know if it would be enough. She did not know if anything would be enough. But she had to try. Minutes passed. Hours. She lost track of time. When she finally lifted her hands, the frost was gone. Theron lay still, his chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm of natural sleep. The crisis had passed, but the door behind her had opened. Senna turned. Zephyra stood in the doorway, flanked by guards, her expression triumphant. "I knew it," she breathed. "I knew there was something wrong with you." The guards' hands went to their swords. "Arrest her," Zephyra commanded. "The woman is an Ember Witch. She has been hiding among us this entire time." "No." Senna scrambled backward, but there was nowhere to go. "I was helping him. I saved his life." "You cursed him." Zephyra's smile was vicious. "That is what your kind does. You wormed your way into his bed, bore his children, and now you are finishing what you started." "That is not true." "The evidence speaks for itself." Zephyra gestured at Theron's still form. "The king lies unconscious after you used forbidden magic on him. Who knows what damage you have done?" The guards advanced. Senna's wolf surged forward, a snarl building in her throat. She would fight. She would die fighting if she had to. But she would not let them take her from her children. "Stop." The voice was weak, but unmistakable. Everyone froze. Theron pushed himself upright, his face pale, his movements stiff, but his eyes burned gold with a fury that made even Zephyra step back. "The next person who touches her," he said quietly, "loses their hand. Your Majesty. Zephyra's voice was honeyed. You have been deceived. This woman is the woman who just saved my life. Theron rose to his feet, swaying slightly. I know what she is, Zephyra. I have known since the moment she walked into this palace. Senna drew a sharp breath. He had known? The mark on her shoulder, Theron continued. The way she flinched whenever fire was mentioned, the fact that she survived nearly 2 years alone with 2 royal pups, something impossible without some form of power. He looked at Senna, and his expression was unreadable. I am not a fool. I simply chose not to care. Zephyra's face twisted. The law is clear. Ember witches must be. The law, Theron interrupted, is whatever I say it is. He stepped between Senna and the guards, his body a shield. This woman is under my protection, my explicit, unconditional, permanent protection. Any action taken against her is treason against the crown. Your Majesty, the council will never. Then the council can take their objections and choke on them. Theron's voice dropped to a growl. Get out. All of you. Now. The guards fled. Zephyra lingered a moment longer, her eyes promising retribution. Then she too withdrew, the door slamming behind her. Silence fell. Theron turned to face Senna. In the dim light, she could see exhaustion carved into every line of his face. Pain, fear, and something else. Something that made her chest ache. You knew, she whispered. I suspected. He moved closer, close enough to touch. I hoped I was wrong. Hoped you were just remarkably lucky. But tonight confirmed it. And you do not hate me? Theron laughed softly. Hate you? Senna? You just burned your way through a curse that has killed every king in my family for 200 years. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek. You revealed your deepest secret to save my life. How could I possibly hate you? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I should have told you, should have trusted you. But I was so afraid. I know. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her, his chin resting on her head. I know. And I am sorry. For making you feel like you had to hide. For pushing you away when all I wanted was to keep you safe. Senna buried her face in his chest. He was warm now. Actually warm. His heart beating strong and steady against her ear. What happens now? She asked. Now? Theron's arms tightened around her. Now we figure out how to break this curse for good. Together. Because if your fire can slow it, maybe, just maybe, it can stop it entirely. And Zephyra will be dealt with. His voice hardened. She has been overstepping for years. Tonight gave me the excuse I needed to remove her from power. Senna pulled back to look at him. She will fight back. She has allies, influence. Let her try. Theron cupped her face in both hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. I am the Alpha King, and I have just discovered I have a reason to live. His eyes searched hers, asking permission, offering a choice. Senna answered by rising on her toes and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative. 2 people rediscovering each other after too long apart. Then Theron's hand slid into her hair, and his mouth opened against hers, and gentleness became hunger. He tasted like winter, like the frost that had nearly killed him. But beneath the cold was warmth. Warmth she had put there, warmth that belonged to her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Theron rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me tonight, he murmured. Not for anything other than this. Being close. I have been alone for so long, Senna. I do not want to be alone anymore. She should say no. Should maintain distance. Should protect herself from the pain of losing him if the curse could not be broken. Yes, she said instead. I will stay. They climbed into his massive bed together, fully clothed, wrapped around each other like survivors of a shipwreck. Theron's body was warm against hers, gloriously, impossibly warm. Her fire had done that. Her forbidden power had given him this gift. Senna, he mumbled against her hair, already half asleep. I never stopped loving you, even when I thought you had left, even when I tried to convince myself I hated you. His arms tightened. I never stopped. Her heart cracked open. I never stopped either, she whispered. But he was already asleep. And as Senna lay there in the Alpha King's arms, watching frost patterns slowly form on the window glass, she realized the truth. Her fire had bought them time, but it had not broken the curse. The ice would return, the cold would come back. And if she could not find a way to stop it permanently, she would have to watch the man she loved freeze to death in her arms. The weeks that followed were the happiest Senna had ever known. She moved into Theron's chambers, not as a secret, but as a declaration. Let the court whisper. Let Zephyra scheme. The Alpha King had made his choice, and he wanted everyone to know it. They fell into a rhythm, the four of them. Mornings began with the pups tumbling into the royal bed, Orin demanding to be tickled, while Nira burrowed between her parents like a small, determined mole. Breakfasts were chaotic affairs of spilled porridge and sticky fingers, and laughter that echoed through halls that had known too little joy. Theron transformed before her eyes. The cold, distant king she had encountered in that village cottage was melting away, replaced by a man who got down on his hands and knees to play wolf with his children, who read them stories in ridiculous voices until they shrieked with delight, who looked at Senna across the nursery with such naked adoration that it made her chest hurt. "You are good at this," she told him one evening, watching him rock Nira to sleep. "Being a father. I had no example to follow." His voice was soft, careful not to wake the drowsing pup. "My own father was distant, cold. I swore I would be different." "You are." Theron looked up at her, and the vulnerability in his expression stole her breath. "Am I? Sometimes I worry I am just pretending, that one day they will realize I have no idea what I am doing." Senna crossed the room and pressed a kiss to his forehead. "None of us know what we are doing. That is the secret of parenthood. We are all just making it up as we go." He caught her hand, pressing his lips to her palm. "Stay with me. Not just now. Forever." "Is that a proposal?" "It is a promise." His golden eyes burned into hers. "When this curse is broken, and it will be broken, I am going to marry you properly, in the Great Hall, in front of everyone. I am going to make you my queen in name as well as truth." Senna's heart soared even as fear whispered beneath it. When the curse is broken. If the curse could be broken. Every night she poured her fire into him. Every night she burned back the frost that crept across his skin while he slept. It was working. He was stronger than he had been in years. The color returned to his cheeks. The ice held at bay. But holding back was not the same as healing. She could feel it beneath the surface, waiting. A cold so deep it made her bones ache when she touched it. The curse was not gone. It was just patient, gathering strength, waiting for the moment her fire faltered. She needed answers, real answers, not just temporary solutions. So while Theron attended to matters of state and the children napped in the nursery, Senna began to research. The palace library was vast, thousands of volumes spanning centuries of Valdris history. Most were useless, treaties and tax records and tedious accounts of border disputes, but buried in the oldest section, behind shelves thick with dust and neglect, she found what she was looking for: the Chronicle of Curses. The book was ancient, its leather binding cracked, its pages yellowed and brittle. But the writing inside was clear enough. The curse had been created 200 years ago by a witch named Morvain, a powerful ember witch, the most powerful of her age, who had loved a king and been betrayed by him. When he cast her aside for a political marriage, she had sworn revenge not just on him, but on every king who came after. "Let the blood of Valdris run cold," she had written in the curse's final stanza. "Let love be poison and warmth be death. Let every king who dares to feel know the price of a broken heart." Senna read the passage 3 times, her hands trembling. An ember witch had created this curse. A witch whose fire had burned so hot that when it was extinguished by betrayal, it transformed into eternal ice. Fire had made this curse. Maybe fire could unmake it. But there was more. At the bottom of the page, in handwriting different from the rest, someone had added a note. The curse feeds on love. It cannot be broken by destroying love, only by love strong enough to burn hotter than the original fire. Only an ember witch descended from Morvaine's bloodline can generate such flame. Senna stared at the words. Morvaine's bloodline. She thought of her mother, the woman who had raised her in secret, who had trained her to suppress her powers, who had warned her never to reveal what she was. Your grandmother was special, her mother had said once when Senna was very young. Special and dangerous. People feared her. That is why we hide, little flame. That is why we must always hide. Her grandmother. And her grandmother's grandmother before her. A line of ember witches stretching back through the generations. It could not be coincidence. Could not be chance that Senna, an ember witch, had stumbled into the bed of the very king her ancestor had cursed. That night, after the children were asleep, and Theron had made love to her with aching tenderness, Senna lay awake and faced the truth she had been avoiding. She was late. Her monthly courses, reliable as clockwork, had not come. She pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling for something too small to detect. A flutter, a spark, the beginning of a new life. She was carrying the Alpha King's child again, and somewhere deep in her bones, in the fire that burned at her core, she felt the curse stir in response. It knew. It was waiting. She told him on a golden afternoon in the garden. The pups were playing in the grass, chasing butterflies they had no hope of catching, their laughter rising like music into the autumn air. Theron sat beside her on a stone bench, his arm around her shoulders, his face tipped toward the sun. He looked healthy, happy, alive. The curse had been dormant for weeks now. Her fire was working, not just holding it back, but actually pushing it into retreat. For the first time since his confession, Theron seemed to believe he might survive. I am pregnant, Senna said. Theron went very still. Then his hand found her stomach, pressing flat against the fabric of her dress, and his face transformed. Joy and terror and wonder all mixed together, so raw and unguarded that it made her eyes burn. You are certain? The healer confirmed it this morning. Another child. His voice cracked. Senna, I never thought. I never dreamed. I know. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. She felt wetness against her hair and realized with a shock that he was crying. I am going to live, he said fiercely. I am going to live to meet this child, to raise them alongside their brother and sister, to grow old with you. Yes, Senna whispered. You are. She believed it. In that moment, wrapped in his arms, surrounded by the sound of their children's laughter, she truly believed it. The weeks that followed were a dream. Theron doted on her shamelessly, bringing her breakfast in bed, rubbing her feet when they ached, reading aloud to her belly each night before sleep. The court watched in bewildered fascination as their cold, distant king transformed into a devoted partner and father. Even Zephyra seemed subdued. She had been stripped of her council position after the incident in Theron's chambers, relegated to minor administrative duties far from the seat of power. Senna saw her occasionally in the corridors, a flash of black hair, a glitter of hatred in dark eyes, but the woman made no move against her. Perhaps she had finally accepted defeat. Perhaps the danger had passed. On the night of the winter solstice, Theron held a feast in the Great Hall, the first celebration Valdris had seen in years. Music and dancing and food and wine, the palace alive with warmth and light and joy. Senna wore a gown of deep crimson, Theron's choice, that made her feel like a flame herself. The pups had been put to bed hours ago, and now she stood at her king's side, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back, and let herself be happy. "Dance with me," Theron murmured. "I do not know the steps." "Neither do I. We will make fools of ourselves together." He swept her onto the floor before she could protest, pulling her close, moving to the music with more grace than she had expected. The court watched, some with approval, others with barely concealed resentment, but Senna did not care. Let them watch. Let them see what love looked like. "I have something to tell you," Theron said quietly, his lips brushing her ear. "Something I have been waiting to say until the right moment." "What is it?" He pulled back just far enough to meet her eyes. In the candlelight, his golden gaze was soft, warm, utterly unguarded. "I love you," he said. "I have loved you since the moment you first bandaged my hand in that infirmary 3 years ago. I have loved you through separation and silence and fear. And I will love you." He stopped. His face went white. His hand flew to his chest. "Theron?" Senna gripped his arms, panic rising. "Theron, what is wrong?" He tried to speak, but no words came. His eyes rolled back, his body convulsed. And then, in the middle of the great hall, surrounded by 500 witnesses, the Alpha King of Valdris collapsed. Chaos erupted. Courtiers screamed. Guards surged forward. Someone knocked over a table, sending plates and goblets crashing to the floor. But Senna heard none of it. She was on her knees beside Theron, her hands on his chest, pouring fire into him with desperate, reckless abandon. It was not working. The frost was spreading faster than she could burn it back. His lips were blue, his skin gray, his heartbeat stuttering beneath her palms. This was worse than before. So much worse, as if the curse had been gathering strength all these weeks, waiting for exactly this moment to strike. "Move aside." The palace healer shoved through the crowd, dropping beside her. "My lady, you must let me examine." "You cannot help him?" Senna's voice was raw. "No one can help him except me." She pushed harder, deeper, throwing everything she had into the fire. Heat blazed from her palms, visible now, actual flames licking against his frozen chest. The crowd gasped and stumbled backward. Someone screamed about witchcraft. Senna did not care. "Come back to me," she begged. "Theron, please, come back to me." His eyes flickered open. "Senna." Her name was a breath, barely audible. "It is not working." "It will. It has to." Tears streamed down her face. "Just hold on, please. Just hold on." The curse. He gasped, his body arching against the cold consuming him. "It is different now. Stronger. It knows you are fighting it." "I do not care what it knows. I will not let it take you." Theron's hand found hers, his fingers like ice against her burning skin. "There is something I never told you. Do not say goodbye. This is not goodbye." The curse was modified, changed. 50 years ago, my grandfather tried to break it. Theron. He made it worse. Made it so that if a king ever truly loved, not just felt but confessed, the curse would accelerate beyond control. Horror washed over her. The confession. He had been about to tell her he loved her. He had confessed love before, that night after the first curse attack. But not like this. Not in public. Not with the full force of his heart behind every word. The curse had been waiting. Waiting for him to love her completely, openly, irrevocably. And now it was going to kill him for it. "No." Senna shook her head violently. "No. This is not how it ends. I will not let this be how it ends." She looked up at the crowd of horrified faces. At Zafira, standing near the back, her expression not shocked but satisfied. Satisfied. Understanding crashed through her like lightning. "You knew," Senna breathed. Zafira's smile was poison. "Knew what, dear?" "You knew about the modification. You knew what would happen if he confessed love in public." Senna rose to her feet, fire crackling at her fingertips. You have been waiting for this, hoping for it. That is why you pushed so hard to separate us. You wanted him to fall in love and then be destroyed by it. The court murmured uneasily. These are wild accusations, Zephyra said smoothly. The ravings of a grief-stricken woman. Are they? Senna took a step forward. Then explain why I found this in your chambers. She reached into her bodice and withdrew a folded page, one she had discovered 3 days ago while investigating the library records, a page that documented who had accessed the Chronicle of Curses and when. The modification to the curse required a witch, Senna continued, her voice ringing through the silent hall. A witch with knowledge of the original spell. 50 years ago, someone convinced King Aldrich that they could help him break the curse. Instead, they made it deadly. And that witch, that traitor, was your grandmother, Ilmara Voss. Zephyra's face went pale. The Voss family has been orchestrating the deaths of Valdris kings for 3 generations, Senna declared. Waiting, watching, making sure no king ever found true love. Or if they did, making sure that love destroyed them. Lies. You have no proof. I have the original documents, your grandmother's journals, the contract she signed with King Aldrich's enemies. Senna smiled grimly. Did you think no one would ever find them? That your family's secrets were buried deep enough? The court had gone deathly quiet. Guards were moving through the crowd now, positioning themselves near Zephyra, waiting for the order. But here is the part you did not count on. Senna turned back to Theron's prone form, her heart breaking at the sight of him. Your grandmother was not the only powerful witch in that era. The original curse was created by an ember witch named Morvain, and She pressed her burning hands to Theron's chest once more. I am descended from her bloodline, the last of her line, the only person in the world whose fire burns hot enough to undo what she created. She closed her eyes. She reached for the deepest part of herself, the part she had spent her whole life suppressing, the part that had always terrified her with its intensity. And she let it go. Fire exploded from her body, not destructive fire, but pure, brilliant, cleansing flame. It roared through the hall like a living thing, swirling around Theron's frozen form, sinking into his skin, burning away the curse that had plagued his family for 2 centuries. She heard screaming, her own, Zephyra's, the crowd's, but it was distant, unimportant. All that mattered was the fire. All that mattered was burning hot enough, deep enough, true enough to reach the curse's frozen heart and melt it. The curse fought back. Cold slammed against her flames, ancient and malevolent, carrying the weight of Morvain's heartbreak and Ilmara's modifications and 200 years of death. It pushed against her fire, trying to extinguish it, trying to freeze the very blood in her veins. But Senna had something the curse did not understand. She had love. Love for the man dying beneath her hands. Love for the children sleeping in the nursery. Love for the family they had built against impossible odds. And love, she discovered, burned hotter than vengeance ever could. The curse shattered. She felt it break. Actually felt it, like ice cracking under spring sunlight, like chains snapping, like a 200-year-old prison finally giving way. The fire died. Senna collapsed. And in the silence that followed, Theron opened his eyes. Senna. His voice was hoarse but strong, warm, alive. She lay crumpled on the floor beside him, her body wrung dry, her fire exhausted. But she forced her eyes open, forced herself to focus on his face. He was looking at her with wonder. You did it, he breathed. I felt it break. The cold that has lived in my chest since I was a boy, it is gone. Gone, she repeated weakly. Really gone? Really gone. He sat up slowly, pressing a hand to his heart. For the first time in my life, I feel warm. Tears spilled down Senna's cheeks. I was so scared. I thought I had lost you. You saved me. Theron gathered her into his arms, pulling her against his chest. Again. You saved me again. Around them, the court stood frozen in shock. 500 witnesses had just watched their king die and be reborn through forbidden magic. Had just learned that the woman they had dismissed as a common healer was actually the heir to the witch who had cursed the royal bloodline, and had just seen that same woman destroy the curse that had haunted Valdris for 2 centuries. The silence stretched. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, someone began to clap. One pair of hands, then another, then a dozen, then 100. The applause built until it thundered through the great hall, accompanied by cheers and shouts, and the stamping of feet. Senna lifted her head in disbelief. They were not calling for her execution. They were not screaming about witchcraft. They were celebrating. "Long live the king!" someone shouted. "Long live the queen!" Queen. The word hit her like a physical force. Theron rose to his feet, pulling her up beside him. His arms circled her waist, holding her steady when her legs threatened to buckle. "My people," he called out, his voice carrying through the hall. "Tonight you have witnessed something unprecedented. A curse that has killed my ancestors for 200 years has been broken. Broken by this woman, Senna of the Ember Blood, who risked everything to save me." He turned to face her, and in his golden eyes she saw love so fierce it took her breath away. She is not just the mother of my children. She is not just my partner and my protector. She is my heart, my soul, my queen. He took her hand, lifting it for all to see. "And I will marry her before the winter ends, if she will have me." The crowd roared its approval, but Senna barely heard them. All she could see was Theron, alive, warm, smiling, asking her to be his wife. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will have you. I will have you forever." He kissed her then, in front of the entire court, and Senna felt something she had never dared hope for. Complete, absolute happiness. Then a commotion near the doors shattered the moment. "Stop her!" a guard shouted. "Lady Voss is fleeing!" Theron's expression hardened. "Seal the palace. No one leaves until she is found." But Senna already knew they would not catch her. Zephyra was cunning, prepared, and had probably planned her escape route years ago. "Actually," a calm voice said from near the entrance, "she is not going anywhere." The crowd parted to reveal a woman Senna had never seen before. Tall, silver-haired, dressed in traveling clothes dusty from the road. She stood with one foot planted on Zephyra's back, the former council head pinned to the floor like a bug beneath a boot. "Who are you?" Theron demanded. The woman smiled, and Senna felt something stir in her chest. Recognition. Kinship. Fire calling to fire. "My name is Corva," the woman said. "I am Senna's aunt, her mother's sister." She looked at Senna, her expression softening. "I have been looking for you for a very long time, little flame, ever since your mother died and you disappeared." Senna's breath caught in her throat. "My mother had a sister?" "She had 2. Myself, and one other. The woman who trained Ilmara Voss in the dark arts." Corva's face hardened. "Our family has been fighting the Voss corruption for 3 generations. I came to finish what your mother started." She hauled Zephyra upright, keeping a firm grip on the woman's arm. "This one has been dosing the king with frost poison for years," Corva continued. "Small amounts. Not enough to kill, but enough to accelerate the curse. Enough to ensure he never lived long enough to find true love." She looked at Theron. "You would have died within the year, Your Majesty, regardless of the curse." She was making certain of it. Zephyra writhed in her grip. "You cannot prove anything." "I can, actually. I have your grandmother's journals, your mother's letters, and your own correspondence with the enemies of Valdris, promising them the throne once the royal line was extinguished." The court erupted in outraged shouts. Theron's voice cut through the noise. "Take her to the dungeons. She will stand trial for treason, conspiracy, and attempted regicide." Guards rushed forward to claim Zephyra. The woman screamed curses as they dragged her away, curses aimed at Senna, at Theron, at the future they had just secured. Senna barely heard them. She was staring at Corva, at this aunt she had never known existed, this piece of her mother's past that had just walked out of the shadows. "I have so many questions," she said faintly. Corva's smile was warm. "And I have answers, but they can wait until morning." She looked at Theron, then at Senna's exhausted face. "Tonight, you should rest. You have just broken an unbreakable curse and saved a kingdom. That is enough work for one evening." Theron laughed, a real laugh, bright and free, and pulled Senna close. "She is right," he murmured against her hair. "Let us go home. Home." The word had never sounded so beautiful. The trial of Zephyra Voss lasted 3 days. Witnesses came forward by the dozen. Servants who had seen her handling strange vials, guards who had noticed her lurking near the king's chambers at odd hours, merchants who had sold her ingredients for frost poison. The evidence was overwhelming, the verdict inevitable. Guilty on all counts. Senna watched from the gallery as Zephyra was led away in chains, her head bowed, her pride finally broken. The woman who had made her life a nightmare would spend the rest of her years in a cell beneath the palace. It was more mercy than she deserved. But the trial had revealed more than just Zephyra's crimes. During the proceedings, Corva had testified about the Voss family's century-long conspiracy. About how Ilmara Voss had approached King Aldrich with false promises of breaking the curse, then modified it instead to ensure it would kill any king who dared to love. About how each subsequent generation of Voss women had positioned themselves close to the throne, waiting for the curse to do its work, eliminating any threats to their plan, and about the counter-conspiracy that had risen to stop them. "Our family descends from Morvaine's youngest daughter," Corva explained to Senna on the morning after the verdict. They sat in the garden, watching the pups play while Theron attended to matters of state. She opposed what her mother had done. Cursing an entire bloodline for one man's betrayal seemed monstrous to her, so she dedicated her life to finding a way to break it. "But she never could," Senna said. "No. The curse was too powerful, too deeply rooted. It would take a descendant of Morvaine herself, one with enough love in her heart to burn hotter than Morvaine's hatred." Corva smiled. "Our ancestor spent her life preparing her daughters for that possibility, teaching them to control their fire, helping them hide from those who would exploit their power. My mother never told me any of this. She was protecting you. The Voss family had killed our grandmother when they discovered what she was doing. Killed our aunt too, when she got too close to the truth. Your mother lived in constant fear that they would find you." Senna thought of her childhood, the moving from town to town, the warnings to hide her fire, the terror whenever strangers asked too many questions. Her mother had not been paranoid. She had been right. "Why did you not come for me sooner?" Senna asked. "After she died?" "I tried." Pain flickered across Corva's face. "By the time I learned of her death, you had already disappeared. I spent years searching, following rumors of a healer with unusual abilities, tracking stories of golden-eyed pups born in remote villages." She shook her head. "You were very good at hiding." "I had to be." "I know." Corva reached over and squeezed her hand. "But you are not hiding anymore. And you are not alone." That afternoon, Senna found Theron in his study, surrounded by documents and looking thoroughly overwhelmed. "The curse is broken," he said when she entered, "but the paperwork is eternal." She laughed, crossing to stand behind him, her hands resting on his shoulders. "What is all this?" "Reforms. Dozens of them." He gestured at the scattered pages. "Lifting the ban on Ember Witches, establishing protections for those with magical abilities, restructuring the council to prevent another Zephyra from ever gaining power." He tipped his head back to look at her. "Your aunt has been very helpful. She has strong opinions about magical governance." "That sounds like Corva." "I like her. She is terrifying, but I like her." Senna bent to kiss his forehead. "She is staying, by the way. She wants to help train me, teach me proper control over my fire. And she wants to be here when the baby comes." At the mention of the baby, Theron's hand found her stomach. They had confirmed it that morning with the healer. Despite everything, the pregnancy had survived. Their third child was growing strong and healthy inside her. "I still cannot believe it," Theron murmured. "A month ago, I was certain I would be dead by spring. Now I have you, 3 children, a broken curse, and a kingdom to rebuild." He pulled her around to sit on his lap. "How did I get so lucky?" "You were not lucky. You fought. You survived. You chose love even when you knew it might kill you." Senna cupped his face in her hands. "That is not luck. That is courage." He kissed her softly, thoroughly, with all the time in the world. When they finally broke apart, his golden eyes were shining. "Marry me," he said. "You already asked." "I already said yes." "I know, but I want to ask again, properly, without a curse trying to kill me or a traitor being exposed or 500 people watching." He slid from beneath her and dropped to one knee, taking her hand in his. "Senna of the Ember Blood, mother of my children, savior of my life, will you marry me?" She pretended to consider. "Well, since you are on your knees." He growled and pulled her down to the floor with him, both of them laughing, tangled together on the carpet of the royal study like children. "Yes," she said against his mouth. "Yes, I will marry you. Today, tomorrow, every day for the rest of our lives." "Good." He rolled them so she was beneath him, his body warm and solid above hers. "Because I have no intention of ever letting you go." The wedding took place on the first day of spring. Senna walked down the aisle of the great hall in a gown of white and gold, flames embroidered along the hem in threads that seemed to shimmer with actual heat. Her hair was woven with flowers from the palace garden, the same garden where Theron had first told her about the pregnancy, where their children had taken their first steps, where they had built a life together against impossible odds. The pups walked before her, Neera scattering petals with solemn concentration, while Oren carried the rings on a pillow he kept trying to eat. The court laughed at their antics, this kingdom that had once been cold and distant now warming under a new kind of rule. And at the altar, waiting for her with tears in his golden eyes, stood Theron, the king who had chosen her when she was nothing, the man who had loved her even when love meant death, her partner, her protector, her forever. "You look beautiful," he whispered when she reached him. "You look nervous." "Terrified," he admitted. "I have faced assassins, curses, and political conspiracies, but somehow, this is worse." "Just do not faint before you say I do." He laughed, and the sound echoed through the hall, and Senna thought she had never heard anything more perfect. The ceremony was simple, traditional. Wolves mated for life, and the vows reflected that. Promises of loyalty, protection, love that would outlast death itself. When the priest finally pronounced them husband and wife, Theron kissed her with such tenderness that she forgot anyone else existed. The kingdom celebrated for 3 days. There was feasting and dancing and fireworks that Senna may have helped create. There were toasts to the new queen, the broken curse, the future of Valdris. There were quiet moments stolen between official duties. Theron pulling her into alcoves for kisses, Senna sneaking away to check on the children, both of them collapsing into bed each night exhausted and happy. On the third night, after the last guest had departed and the palace had finally gone quiet, Senna stood at the window of their chambers and looked out at the kingdom below. Theron came up behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That nearly 2 years ago I was alone in a crumbling cottage, waiting for a mob to kill me and my children." She turned in his arms, looking up at his beloved face. "Now I am queen of Valdris, married to a man I love, with 3 beautiful pups and another on the way." "4," Theron said. Senna blinked. "What?" "The healer told me this morning, you are carrying twins." The world tilted. "Twins? But that means—" "5 children total. Theron grinned, looking far too pleased with himself. I hope you were not planning on getting much sleep for the next decade. Senna stared at him. Then she started to laugh. 5 children. 5 heirs to a curse-free throne. 5 small humans who would grow up loved and safe and warm, never knowing the cold that had plagued their family for 200 years. I love you, she said when she could finally speak again. I love you so much it terrifies me. I know the feeling. Theron kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. But I am not afraid anymore. For the first time in my life, I am not afraid of loving something. They stood together at the window, watching the stars wheel overhead as the palace settled into peace around them. Behind them, in the nursery, Nira and Oren slept soundly, their golden eyes closed, their dreams sweet. In Senna's belly, 2 new lives grew, their hearts already beating in tandem. And throughout the kingdom, in every village and town and lonely cottage where ember witches had once hidden in fear, word was spreading of a new era. The curse was broken. The king was healed. And love, against all odds, had won. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought. I always read your comments, and they mean more than you know.